The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I have the pleasure of being with Kristen and Erin from PeopleSpark Consulting. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
We were just talking before hitting record. I believe this, I may be wrong, but I don't remember doing another interview with two guests. So this is going to be a first. And you both bring a lot to, I think, to what we're going to be exploring today, because you're relatively new to the consulting world, but you've accomplished so much, relatively quickly, and had the privilege and honor of kind of having a firsthand kind of glance into that, or first row seat, maybe I should say, into watching that growth. But you bring 15 to 20 years of experience in kind of coaching executives in HR, working in the HR world. You are well credentialed. You have a whole bunch of certifications, which we won't get into here, but you're well certified, as we just joked about a moment ago. And you started PeopleSpark Consulting in 2018, but the real official kickoff was just in 19. So let's kind of go back to the beginning for both of you here. I mean, what prompted you to go out on your own, leave the quote unquote corporate world and start the business?
Well, Kristen and I, what we found ourselves in our last roles was that we were reading a couple of books together. We had worked on a few projects. We had co-facilitated some courses together in our last role. And we were reading a couple of books just for personal development in our own roles. And I started getting the itch to maybe go out on my own. And it took a couple of courses through some local business development centers. And at one point when we were reading one of these career development books, I had told Kristen, I said, well, you've got some really complementary skills to what I have, and vice versa. I think we should do this together. And she laughed at me, but we ended up going ahead and putting together a business plan, and even pitched our husbands around how serious we were about it and what we thought the business could look like within 1 year, within 3 to 5 years as well. And within about 3 or 4 months of that, ended up incorporating and putting in our transition plan with our employer to transition out of those roles by the end of 2018.
We were talking about, again, before hitting the record, just about the growth that you guys have been seeing and hitting record months after month, like a lot of good stuff going on, which we'll get more into the details, because I know people will want to learn a little bit more about how you've been doing that and what's kind of been supporting that growth in terms of the actions that you're taking. But before we dive into that, I mean, I think you bring a really interesting dynamic in the two of you working on this together. And in our work together, I've seen multiple times just how well you guys connect and communicate. So I want to dive a little bit into that. For those that are considering working with a partner, co-founding something, like first of all, what really went into that decision? Was there any moment when either one of you hesitated about, well, maybe I should just do this myself, versus going in and doing it together?
I can speak for my own. I never thought about doing it myself. I am grateful and thankful every day that I'm on this journey with Erin, because you always have that support, that cheerleader, that somebody to add a different perspective, somebody to push me. One of the things that I'm not sure if we would have asked this 2 years ago, if I would have been able to answer it so clearly, but our strengths are so different that it's really pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me accomplish things that I wouldn't have. And then I think the other thing that really ties in well to this is a lot of what we talk about from a human resources perspective in coaching managers and leaders on how to communicate with teams and some of those skills that they use. We actually use those with each other. And we say that in our training and we joke about it, but we really do. We both have, and again, not to speak on your behalf, Erin, but we both have that perspective of, I need to hear what Erin is going to say because I know she's going to see it differently. And I know that we'll have a better product and a better result because I know she'll see it differently.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit further here, and Erin, get your perspective as well, because I'm thinking about the consultant out there, firm owner, whatever it might be, and maybe they have a co-founder or they're bringing on a partner or they're bringing on someone else to complement an area that isn't, maybe they're not strong in. But what have you guys learned throughout this process over the last, kind of year plus? What are some of the big lessons that you found have been really important that have allowed you to actually work at the level that you're working and to kind of essentially just operate together so effectively? What stands out? It might be for some HR stuff that you guys actually teach, or maybe things that you've identified yourselves. But if you had to say a few things that have really allowed you to work well together and kind of feed off of each other, what would they be?
I would say, so even building on what Kristen was saying earlier with using some of the tools that we use with skill building with managers and leaders, there's a few of them in particular that we've used and I think have helped us to draw one another out when we can see that somebody is, when either one of us is starting to close up a little bit, where we might not be feeling comfortable. It might not be feeling like it's something that I want to speak up and say that I disagree with. But we go back to those words and we go back to the language. So even though she knows the secret code words, it gives us the safety to be able to bring things up that otherwise could sound as though I might be attacking, or I might be disagreeing or being disrespectful with someone. So even though she knows the secret, it allows us to have some of those discussions and conversations. And I don't know that I ever expected those tools to be something that we would use in the way that we have. But it's really helped us keep things out on the surface and to talk through versus feeling as though maybe I get frustrated with it, but I don't say anything. And then it builds and builds and builds into this snowball that causes much bigger challenges.
So listeners of the Consulting Success Podcast know that I love to dig into the details and try and provide, tangible kind of tactics or advice or perspectives for people. So you mentioned a few things there that I think are really important, and I want to go deeper into them. The first thing you mentioned was that if you notice that the other person is maybe a little bit upset or holding something back or whatever it be, can you give us kind of a more tangible example of what you do? So let's say that, Kristen, you're talking to Erin, and Erin, you feel that she might be holding something back or is uncomfortable or might be upset or concerned. Like, what's an example of something that you would say to get the other person to open up in a way that they don't feel that it's threatening for them?
Two of the phrases that we use a lot are, what am I missing? And can you say more about that? And those are when Erin talks about the code words, whenever we use one of those, you're like, oh, okay, this is right. Like, I know I need to pay attention more, or I know that there is more to this, or I know, and it helps kind of engage your brain in, this is something that we need to work through. And it's right, there's something that needs to be said. But very much, I would say we both have very strong personalities. Mm-hmm. And we see things differently. So a lot of times we put stuff out there of like, this is it. This is the way it is. And we say it very strongly. And so encouraging that other person to say it of, this is what I feel. What do you see? How are you seeing it? What am I missing? Or if she is explaining something and it's striking me wrong, it's can you say more about that? Mm-hmm. Because I know that there's more in there that I'm just not understanding it. It forces in a good way, right? To listen more of like, can you say more about that? Because I know that she's got brilliant ideas. I'm just not fully understanding it.
Got it. And then, Erin, are these words that you've defined in advance? Like, do both you and Kristen know, hey, here's like the 5 or 10 words that if we're ever uncomfortable or something's going on, like we use these, and then because you define them beforehand, you both know? Or is it just, they just come up and over time you develop them? I'm just wondering for people who are listening going, yeah, I want to make sure that I'm operating at the highest level of communication with my team. Like, is this a best practice to essentially make a list of specific words and everyone knows that when those words are being said, that here's kind of the underlying meaning to them? Can you just talk about that for a moment and what the perspective is there?
Sure. So I would say we didn't define the words and kind of what that meant behaviorally for us in advance. That said, both of those phrases are on kind of our top 10 list. And it's a top 10 list that we use in any of our speaking engagements or as we're talking with managers and supervisors around the key phrases that we've coached managers on how to interact with employees over the years that we've just really gravitated towards, because the intent in those phrases is really to open up the conversation and open up a discussion for more input. And I'd say that the other two phrases that we use too is from one of our favorite books, Crucial Conversations. by Joseph Grenny and a number of other authors. And there's two phrases. They're called contrasting statements. And we use those regularly as well, where if I'm asking a lot of questions, if I'm not necessarily in agreement right away, if I'm asking a lot of questions, clarifying my intent up front. So my intent isn't to second guess where you're going with this. My intent is really to better understand what's happening because I feel like I'm missing something. And so there's another code phrase there with the contrasting statements, and we joke about them, but we use them and we can see the power just in how it's helped our business.
Yeah, I love that, because that was going to be my second kind of part of that question is like, what's the secret society and words that you guys, are in that I don't know about, because it sounds pretty cool. But so it's essentially these words that you use in your teachings with clients, but also that you have adopted and you both use. And I can really see that. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
And with our children, with our clients, we use it. With each other, we use them a lot and practice them a lot with our kids too.
I'm going to have to dig deeper into these then, because I could certainly use this with my eldest daughter, I think. So let's now kind of back a little bit. So you started the firm together. How did you guys go about getting your first client or two? And it sounded like they may have, I don't know if land in your lap is the right word, but tell me about how do you get those first couple of clients?
I would say probably the same way that a lot of early business owners, early consultants would be doing, and just looking at and talking with others that are in your network, people that you've worked with before who are going to, in our case, they were in smaller companies who didn't necessarily have a lot of HR support in the way that they did when we were in larger companies.
Right.
And so reinvigorating, reconnecting with those people early on really helped us find some of our earliest and even some, in a couple of cases, our longest standing clients.
Yeah, they certainly did not land in your lap. I definitely misspoke on that. You are taking action to have conversations. So walk us through. I mean, I think like I just got off a call with a new client and we're talking about how they have this network that they have not leveraged for quite some time. And we see this come up with a lot of consultants, even if they are, they've been consulting for many years. Many people have a network and connections that they're not reaching out to consistently or checking in or, staying visible with. So more tactically or tangibly, like what did you guys do? Did you send emails? Did you just start making phone calls? What was the method or the format? And the second part of that is, what did you ask? What was the actual message that you were sending initially to people?
One, I would say the first thing that we really did was tried to find ways to get to speaking engagements. Mm-hmm. So how do we get in front of people? How can people get to know us that way? So either establishing contacts or leveraging our networks of people that could put us in front of our ideal client. One of the things that we have experienced as HR people is people aren't always the most excited to hear from HR people, right? You can get that kind of cringe. I remember our first speaking engagement where we were in front of about 25 ideal clients. And when we were introducing ourselves to participants ahead of our presentation, they were like, oh, you're the HR people, right? That they weren't necessarily excited about that. But then when people get to know us and start to like us, then it really made a difference. So by the time we were done, people were saying like, wow, that was the best presentation that we've been to here. So we found that speaking engagements allowed people to get to know us and who we are. And for us, that differentiated us, especially in the human resources space.
Mm-hmm. And was that speaking engagements, when you say, like, were you reaching out to associations or to companies or to events? Like, who was it that you were actually reaching out to? While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months. So don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio. AUDIO.
Yeah. So early on, so I would say even in response to your last question, a lot of email outreach to personal network around, here's the business I'm developing. Here's a little bit more about PeopleSpark and about Kristen and what we offer as a total. And here's really what we stand for, because our premise, how we base a lot of our work is on being straightforward and practical, like with our clients in our approach, and asking, if you know people where this could be helpful to them, where they have HR support, or maybe they have HR being covered by other people, these would be great ones for us to get in touch with. For the speaking engagements, a big chunk of it was part of our network, where I had several colleagues in my last role who were totally on board and very supportive with the work that we were doing, and said, hey, I know of this particular group of people who meet twice a year, and I know recently they've had some questions around HR. Can I put you in contact with them? And then that kind of took a path of its own. And then even a former colleague of mine that I used to support brings together some of his own customers a couple of times a year for development, for kind of understanding what's happening in their business, and asked us to come and speak with that group as well. It was a way that they, as a sales organization in particular, could offer more value to their customers that ended up also being our ideal customers as well. So we could serve them and also kind of honor the relationship that we had with these former colleagues.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
Is there any best practice that you've learned or observed or applied in reaching out that's helped you to land, whether it's speaking opportunities or even just meetings with people? What would you say is a best practice that you continue to use today, or that you'd recommend to people?
For me, it's really showing the impact and being able to communicate the differences we have made with some of our organizations. So we had a client that we worked with recently where the work that we did with them, even though we're human resources, was really able to drive operating margins and reduce shrink, which were two of their key goals for the year. And when people start to see that result and start to hear the stories of the things that we have been able to do and the types of businesses we've worked with, that's really helped us right, you're making a big difference. You are valuable for us to put in front of a group. We are simple, practical.
I love these because I think a lot of people don't share those stories, yet those stories of examples of work that you've done or results, even if you're transitioning, you're new to consulting, you can still leverage from your past experiences in the employee or as an employee. And so that's great that you're using that, and clearly it's working. Let's kind of shift gear for a moment. I mean, you mentioned that you were emailing people, reaching out and just saying, hey, like, here's what we're doing. Here's what our company is about. If you know anyone. And many consultants, regardless of whether they are brand new in the business or they've been doing it for a while, when they start having to shift and really they understand how the importance of marketing, they, in many cases, feel uncomfortable talking about themselves and kind of promoting themselves, because especially when you're coming from the corporate world, that's not something that you typically are used to doing. The focus is not on you, it's on the product or the service that the organization has, or it's on the company itself, but rarely about you as the individual. And here in consulting, it needs to be about it's about the client, but you do have to talk about what you are doing and your area of expertise and so forth. What was your mindset going into that? I mean, is this something that you guys ever felt uncomfortable with and you did something to work around it? Or were you both just from the beginning like, yeah, we know we need to do this?
I would say we still deal with our moments of being uncomfortable with it today. And I mean, the speaking engagement that Kristen was talking about, that very first one, right, as soon as we were on our own, what was fascinating about that is that we have a mentor who was a former colleague of mine who was there, who came up to us afterward. And he said, okay, ladies, you have an entire room full of people who want to work with you. and they don't know how they can interact with you. They don't know what you offer, because we were so early in our journey that we had an ideal of how we would engage with clients, but we didn't have anything down to a really crisp offering.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say as our business has grown and even as our offerings have been clarified and kind of tweaked and just edited over the last couple of years, it has become much easier for us to talk then about the results that we've seen with other clients and be able to relate them, because it's more of just telling a story. And it's around, oh, you've had this type of pain point. Well, we've heard about this from a few others as well. And are you experiencing some of these other things? Because I remember early on that they were experiencing something similar. And as an HR person in a sales capacity now, we're able to serve in a lot of the same ways that we were able to serve when we were supporting parts of the organization when we were in a larger company too. It's just slightly different now because we're the ones that are the service offering.
And I think there was a huge mental shift that had to take place in my mind for that to happen, because I saw myself as a human resources subject matter expert that had a consulting company. And partway through, I had to shift to, no, you are a small business owner who specializes in human resources. And as much as that seems like a small tweak, it's a mindset shift. And as we talk to other people who have been on this journey too, you can see the distinction of who has taken on that shift and who hasn't.
Yeah.
You see yourself different when you see yourself as the CEO, as the co-founder, as a small business owner versus an expert in a specific area. And that to me was the moment that I got that allowed me to grow and develop more in that role. Not to say that I'm more comfortable with it. As Erin said, we still have our uncomfortable moments of you're like, oh boy. But that mental shift had to occur before I could really advance in that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's really great feedback. There's many HR consultants and HR consulting firms out there. What would you say that you have both done to differentiate PeopleSpark and to really carve out an area of specialization, or just to carve out kind of your brand awareness and visibility and really to land some great business? Any thoughts on the best practices or really what's made the biggest difference there?
There are a couple of things that I'll go into. One is really focusing on our ideal client. And our ideal client, we work with a lot of businesses in the agriculture industry. And so that really helped us tailor and focus in that way. And there hasn't been a lot around human resources in that space. It has mostly been process and compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And our take is a bit different, that it's not how do you manage your compliance and your processes from human resources, but we differentiate by focusing on our goal is your business. What are your business strategies? Where does your business want to go? How can you strategically leverage, I got a couple of buzzwords there, right? How can you strategically leverage your human resources to get there, right? How can you make sure that the processes that you have in place are aligning to where you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that seem so, after we talk to businesses about it, they're like, oh, wow, that seems obvious. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? You really want to focus on performance, but you're rewarding people for longevity.
Mm-hmm.
You really want people to focus on shrink, but you are focusing somewhere else. You really want to help people and help people be successful, but in doing that, you're not engaging your team. You actually end up micromanaging your team. So we take it to that business strategy, business focus level that has been able to differentiate us. I would also say, one of the things that we hear is you're not the typical HR person. And it's because we're not just focused on like, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. I think that's what people have in their heads, that we approach it from you want to get to point A, here's the simplest way to get there.
Yeah.
Let's focus on that.
What you're sharing right now, I think there's two big things. And for everyone listening and watching right now, even if you're not in HR, I think these principles still apply to you. And the first one you just mentioned, Kristen, is that focus, that specialization, that getting very clear on who your ideal client is, which allows you then to make your messaging more relevant to them, to make your marketing and your materials and just your outreach and follow up and your targeting on that specific kind of industry or type of client. And a lot of people hesitate to do that, but clearly that's been beneficial for you both. The second is really connecting the work that you're doing And so in your case, it's HR, but for some people, it might be around technology. It might be around science. It might be around design, branding, leadership, whatever. But you've connected it to the business impact for the company, right? So it's not just about, hey, I'm going to help you guys with some HR training and get people kind of aligned. Well, really what I'm hearing you do is you're looking at, okay, if we're going to get people trained or we're going to get people aligned, here's the impact that it can have for your business. And so have you seen by doing that, has that had an impact on your fees and on your pricing? Any connection that you've seen between, since you're focusing more on the business outcomes and the value that you're creating, would you say that has influenced how you guys go about your pricing? Because I know that you have adjusted your pricing over time. Or would you say there's other factors that you think play into that, the shift that you made in your pricing more?
I'd say that it certainly has impacted the pricing overall. And, pricing is something where I think it continues to evolve, where you continue to see what kind of value really does this offer up to a client, and then allowing for that to influence where you take your pricing overall. I think it's an ongoing evolution, and that too also involves additional mindset work around, especially I would say in a function like HR, which in a lot of cases and in a lot of instances doesn't always seem as though it's aligned with business goals, but it definitely has influenced it for sure.
As a client in the Clarity coaching program, I've had the honor of really watching as you guys take action and apply and then see really dramatic, significant results in your business. Before coming into the program, what were you dealing with, or what was top of mind for you guys? What were the main kind of areas that you feel like you were running up against, that you were looking for some new ideas or support or help with?
For me, you just talked about ideal client, and I would say we resisted it for a long time because it felt like there was going to be so much that we would miss out on by focusing our marketing message on one industry and on one ideal client, and really zeroing in on it and saying, this isn't to say that we don't work with other people. This is to say that our marketing message and that how our website looks and how we go and develop content, that is going to be the stuff that's geared directly to our ideal customer, our ideal client. And that if we find other people, other great clients to work with, that's icing on the cake. And Kristen, what additionally would you add?
We didn't have kind of a good process or a good flow of bringing somebody from connection to agreement. And that was we'd get people started and then not be able to really drive the bigger agreements, the bigger projects.
So to move people through the pipeline more effectively at higher value price points, that sort of thing? Okay.
Yes, and kind of closing the deal.
Right. How about your marketing? Has your approach to marketing, is there anything that you're doing right now? Because I've seen your business grow considerably, right? What do you feel is driving that the most, or what's having an influence? Anything that you're doing these days that you would say that you're doing differently than before, or you just even weren't doing differently in terms of best practices that others might be able to benefit from?
I would say with the ideal client, first of all, just keeping our ideal client front of mind whenever we're writing something or developing the content. And we're also doing things like using other medium where we haven't done it as much in our, say, social marketing, but using things like video a lot more has been something where we can see, in the absence of being able to do speaking engagements, is another way of getting in front of people and helping build the know, like, trust factor.
Yeah.
I would also say one of our first calls with you, we were right when COVID started, because I think it was May. So, we were about 6 weeks in, we were still under a shelter in place order in the state. And one of the things that you said of but you have all of these contacts and you haven't reached out to them. And thinking about how you are continuing to reach out to them, it was one of those, I feel like we both got off the call and went, well, we should have known that. That's such a really great idea. And it made a difference because we immediately then started to reach out and connect with people. And we have gotten projects from those connections because I feel like, you have so much ahead of you and you're always thinking of the future. So you're always trying to think of what else can I do to get to these people? What else can I do to get to these people? And you end up forgetting the 300 people on your mailing list, how you can connect with them personally and how you can stay top of mind and how you can. So to me, that was another big one of sometimes we heard from somebody else, there's money in your inbox. And when you think about that, you're like, oh, there really is, right? There is an email from a connection that, if you would reach out to them again, they might know somebody. There is somebody who asked a question a while ago, and maybe there's an outstanding project that you never really got back to, but that shifts your paradigm to kind of what's in front of you as well, so that you don't forget those things. So there was one day we were like, there's money in our inbox, find it.
There definitely is. You brought up something I was going to hit on right now, which before wrapping up, talk about the pandemic and really just the uncertainty and chaos. And there's a lot of people who look at what's going on right now as consultants and go, yeah, there isn't much business to be had. People aren't buying, so on, so on, so on. And here you are really kicking that, like the other side of the field and saying, no, look, we're growing our business during this time. For someone who might be a little bit frozen, deer in the headlights, not maybe taking as much action as they could be, or maybe they'd like to, but they're telling themselves things like, yeah, people aren't buying, there's no point in doing this, or I'll do it later, I'm going to wait until things change. What advice would you offer to them? If you look at what you guys have done, what you've observed, what you've actually just seen firsthand in the industry, and clearly you've been able to not only keep the business going, but you're growing the business like month over month and just seeing some really great results. What advice would you offer to people, or what suggestions would you provide in terms of what you've specifically done and seen yourselves?
A few things, and I'm going to leave some of it to Erin, because Erin was really good at driving this is the time that we got to put our foot on the gas and move forward.
You guys are so good talking positive about each other. I love it. It's like you always elevate the other person. It's one of the things that I love. Every time I speak to you guys, I just know it's going to be coming almost every moment. It's so nice, because I think these days that doesn't happen enough, where people don't give their partner or someone they're working with credit, or support them or put them out like a spotlight on them. And I just wanted to acknowledge both of you for doing that, because it's not one-sided. You both do it for each other. So, all right, Kristen, go ahead.
One, we got a coach. That's the point where we really engaged you. And there is that moment of like, are we going to have the funds to be able to support this? How is this going to work? How are we going to? No, we need to invest in ourselves. Now is the best time of any to do that. And surrounding yourself with people in that same perspective and mindset through the coach, but also just in other networking of, nope, we're going to figure this out, was really helpful in that. And then just adjusting our business model to do that. And in fact, now the way we've adjusted how we do business, because we did flex, I can tell you that, first of all, we flexed last fall to do a lot more online, which we didn't anticipate. We didn't know when we put it online that we were preparing for a pandemic, but it worked. But we've even adjusted how we deliver our services throughout. That we'll continue to do as we go forward. That's not going to change once we stop. It made us be more effective and efficient. But Erin, you were really a lot of the driving force in how do we speed up, put our foot on the gas as we go through the pandemic.
Well, and it felt like when everything was starting to close in almost, that it's easy to get sucked into that weird vacuum. And when I thought about experiences that we've had in our, like kind of the career changing experiences where you've had as a leader, it's not when things are going well. It's when things are kind of in crisis. And it felt as though I remember texting Kristen on my way down to a wedding, just saying like, yes, we need to put our foot on the gas pedal, but this is when people need us. And especially small business owners, especially with companies that have less than 200 employees, are in these spaces where we don't know what we're going into, and they don't know, we don't know, but we can offer what we have to offer is the value of being able to lead through change, which is Kristen's sweet spot for sure, but leading through that change and leading through uncertainty and trying to bring and put together plans for businesses so that they can continue to not just survive, but continue to thrive throughout it as well.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. It's easy to be a leader when everything's going great, right? But the real kind of, rubber meets the road, and the real test is how do you respond when things are not going well, when there's a lot of challenge, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of chaos. And I think this is what we've seen consistently across so many clients' businesses and our own business and others. When I wrote the Act Now book and interviewing some people, some other experts, that the people who are making the greatest progress right now, they're not sitting back and waiting. They're taking action. They're looking at this. Yes, they recognize there's challenges and they're empathetic to those challenges, but it's a time to roll up your sleeves and make things happen. And not only will you get through, as you've seen in your business, we've seen in our business, not only do you survive this time, you're actually growing during this time, and you're going to be setting yourself up for so much more growth and results going forward, because the seeds you're planting today, they're also going to serve you down the line. That goes for everyone. I mean, everyone has that opportunity, that same ability, but it's all about, taking action. And both of you have done that tremendously well. Kristen.
Well, you actually gave a quote to us yesterday that imperfect action trumps no action every time, right? So no matter what you do, I mean, for a while, it kind of felt like, we're going to put this out there and try it. We're going to put this out there and try it. What worked, we continued to leverage. The stuff that there were some that we were like, well, we don't know if this is working or not. We ended up getting a client. So it was just that movement.
Right. And I can't take credit for that quote because I think it comes from Truman. In trying to think of the exact quote, I have to bring it up, but it's like, imperfect action trumps perfect inaction every time. Or
perfect inaction. That's what it is. Mm-hmm.
But yes, I love that quote. So where can people go? Where should they go to learn more about both of you, the work that you're doing, see what you're up to, connect with you? Where should we send people?
Yeah, the best place to go would be peoplesparkconsulting.com. And we would love to connect with people out there or even through LinkedIn as well.
We have a blog that we are continuing putting content on.
We'll make sure to link all that up in the show notes, and so people can reach out and see what you guys are doing and connect. But thank you both again so much for coming on here today. I'm really excited to continue watching the growth and hearing more about it and speaking with you both soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.